This week we look at the Christian and work number 11 in our series on education, and this is an interesting perspective, isn't it? Because as we think about education, we are really thinking, okay, we need to prepare our children for their work experience, because everybody needs a career, everybody needs a job to do, they need to be able to survive. As a parent, I've got to think about my children's education because I want them to live a long and happy life, to be able to earn their living so that they're not destitute, and so on. And we all think like that, and we as church members also think along those lines. But when we think about the Christian work, we're not just thinking about giving our children and giving ourselves the ability to get a good job. We're thinking about what does that mean in practice in terms of how we operate, how we live our lives, in fact. And there's some quotes for this time which I think are important. Dostoevsky says, deprived of meaningful work, men and women lose their reason for existence. They go stark, raving mad. And you might say, well, I could do with a bit more time off. But I think having a job to do, having work, is actually very fulfilling. You remember that right there in the beginning, before our parents fell into sin, Adam and Eve were given work to do, to tend the garden, to cultivate it. Now, it wasn't back-breaking toil like we have now. That came in after the fall. But it was an experience of having something that would occupy their minds and their bodies, to do something. And we are still programmed that way, to want to do something. I love the fact that I've had a very enjoyable life because I've been at work. I've worked for the church many years, and most recently I've been working on a free Bible translation. That's been very fulfilling, and now we'll look at doing other versions and commentary and all the rest of it. There's always something to be doing, and my mind is occupied, and I love the fact that God gives me work to do, especially fulfilling work for Him. Other quotes there, one from Billy Graham: read the Bible, work hard and honestly, and don't complain. Dorothy Sayers: the only Christian work is good work. Well done. We've got to have excellence in our work. And then we turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. And this is the conclusion of Solomon. Whatever you do, do it with all your strength. For when you go to the grave, there's no more working or thinking, no more knowing or being wise. Whatever you do, do it with all your strength. Be committed to your work. Find fulfillment in your work. Make sure you give it 110% because it's worthwhile. Whatever it is that you're doing, make sure you do it well, because you're also representing God to those around, those who watch you. People may ask you questions. So why do you commit yourself to doing that? Why don't you clock out early and get some extra money that way? Or what are you doing that is representing God by not following the ways of others around you who are operating according to the principles of this world? There's much to do in terms of working as a Christian believer. Even in our relationships to our bosses, to our fellow colleagues, we are there representing God at work. And Ellen White, in that last quote for this time, points us in those directions. In every business transaction, a Christian will be just what he wants his brethren to think he is. His course of action is guided by underlying principles. He does not scheme, therefore he has nothing to conceal, nothing to gloss over. He may be criticized, he may be tested, but his unbending integrity will shine forth like pure gold, and so on. Doesn't take advantage. He's a friend and benefactor. His fellow men put confidence in him. A truly honest man will never take advantage of weakness and competency in order to fill his own purse. So there's a good example of the principles by which we are to operate as Christians at work, fulfilling God's purpose in us. Our educational background is important for our work. We need to have learned. We need to learn on the job. We need to do our studies while we're still doing that. But most of all, our education as Christians, from reading the Bible, through our prayer life, through interacting with other Christians, going to church, listening to sermons, all the rest of that, is to help us to represent God and to share the good news with those around us.